I'm Elisa Parenti in Washington, and you're watching Bloomberg Technology. Here's a check of your first word news. A chartered train carrying dozens of GOP lawmakers to a Republican policy retreat in West Virginia struck a garbage truck in a rural Virginia town today. One person was killed and several others wounded. Lawmakers said the fatality appeared to be someone on the truck. South Carolina Republican Congressman and chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Trey Gowdy, is not seeking re-election. Gowdy, a former federal prosecutor, says he's returning to the justice system. Gowdy chaired a panel investigating the 2012 terrorist attack in Benghazi, Libya. His announcement brings to 64 the total number of members of Congress not opting to seek re-election. And CNN reports President Trump wanted to know where special counsel's Russia investigation was headed and asked if Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein was, quote, on my team before a key appearance on Capitol Hill. The top DOJ official in the Russia investigation had sought Trump's support in fighting off document demands from House Intel Chair Devin Nunes. And the moon puts on a rare cosmic show today, a red blue moon, super big and super bright. The first time in 15 years a blue moon has synced up with a supermoon and a total lunar eclipse. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Emily Chang, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, Facebook's hit and miss, our look at fourth quarter earnings for the social media giant, and the most concerning metric for Wall Street. Plus, Microsoft earnings also on tap, how the world's largest software companies push into blockchain tech and the cloud added to its bottom line this quarter. And the court battle between Uber and Waymo is upon us. We will get color from inside the courtroom as Travis Kalanick and Larry Page get ready to testify. First, to our lead. Facebook reports its fourth quarter earnings results, and here are the highlights. Revenue coming in at nearly $13 billion, beating the highest estimates from analysts. Monthly active users totaling 2.13 billion, while daily active users came in at 1.4 billion, slightly below forecast. That is one of the most important metrics that Wall Street cares about. Now, Facebook stock extended losses in after-hours trading, down 4% at the moment. For more reaction, let's bring in David Kirkpatrick, CEO of Techonomy, who knows all about Facebook, having written The Facebook Effect, the book on Facebook, and Jitendra Wawal, analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence, with me here in the studios. One of the most surprising numbers, Jitendra, is that daily active users in the U.S. actually declined for the first time ever.
Yes, and so that raises the question about the changes that they're making to the platform, and would it accelerate this trend this year? It could be a temporary shift, if you may, to these metrics, but you know, Instagram and ad pricing still are big offsets for them this year. So I think more commentary on the call would be focused on what those changes mean to this trajectory of the decline that we're seeing here. Meantime,
David, Zuckerberg saying that the changes that they are making on Facebook are decreasing user engagement. How, do you look at these results?
I wouldn't put too much importance on the drop in daily active users globally, the decline, the miss, I should say. What Jitendra mentions about an actual decline in the U.S. is interesting and could be a response to Facebook's manipulation of the way the news feed works. And I just want to point to something in the release, that really makes me wonder how the world ought to respond to this notion of them making these changes to try to make us all do better. It's sort of like a very manipulative attitude. Listen to what he says. He says, "We've made the decision to show fewer viral videos to make sure people's time is well spent. And we reduced time spent on Facebook by roughly 50 million hours every day." Now, that's global. But really, doesn't it sound a little bit like Geppetto and the Strings of Pinocchio or something? Oh, we're going to show you fewer viral videos because we know what's good for you. I think they're on very thin ice with the way they're handling these problems, and it's very hard to know what really should be done, but I'm not sure that just telling us to watch fewer viral videos is the answer.
The Facebook earnings call has started. Mark Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg, Dave Wehner, the CFO, speaking on that call. You can watch the live headlines as they happen on our blog on the terminal TLive Go. Jitendra, is this thin ice where now Facebook is swinging in the opposite direction, trying to do better for its users?
On the core platform, I believe so. But having said that, they do have Instagram up their sleeve. That platform is heading towards 1 billion people. Right now, it's just in the beginning phase of monetization, and it could be much more material in terms of their revenue contribution longer term. So I think ad pricing, offsets, and Instagram would be, again, my core points. As far as the changes are concerned, I mean, if they're able to show that this trajectory of daily active users is just temporary, but the amount of time eventually improves, I think the ROI will show up on advertisers' front and they'll be fine.
David, do you think they're going to have to make these hard choices on Instagram as well?
It's possible. It's interesting that Instagram hasn't been hit with the same kind of concerns as Facebook's core platform, even as Instagram is clearly getting more and more advertising revenue. I just want to point out that despite all the political and social challenges that Facebook faces, though, the financials of this quarter are spectacular. They have the highest operating margin they may have ever had. Their profits, their revenue went up just about 50%, but their costs only went up 30%. That's like on a $12 billion per quarter revenue run rate. I mean, this is a profit machine that has a lot of money to experiment with these many problems that they need to solve.
I also want to point out another number. They've increased headcount 47% year over year. They now have 25,000 employees. We know that they've been hiring people to combat things like fake news, to combat things like offensive and disturbing content. What do you make, Jitendra, of the sheer scale at which the employee base is growing to respond to some of these concerns? So
they have a lot of unmonetized properties as well that they have to support billions of people. So you have Messenger, you have WhatsApp, and on top of that, I don't know if hiring people is directly correlated to the actual impact of that in terms of reduced fake news and better quality content and things like that, but at least they're making the effort. And I feel this year, based on what Mark Zuckerberg has said, that number might be even bigger.
Zuckerberg speaking on the call right now. You can see what he's saying on TLive, reiterating the importance of personal connections and how passively consuming public content takes away from the time people spend connecting with each other. So there you go again, David, to some extent, sort of moralizing the way we use Facebook, going strong there.
It's interesting. Moralizing is an interesting word. I mean, clearly the world wants Facebook to have less of a toxic effect on society. And I would argue, on balance, Facebook still has a phenomenally beneficial effect on society. But there are some very toxic components that we've been hearing about, whether it's addiction, political manipulation, etc. That's a global problem, not just in the U.S. But it's interesting to ask yourself whether the world really wants these people with very little transparency to be the ones kind of telling us what's good for us. I think it's a very slippery slope, and I think they could get some pushback for that itself. So it just underscores what a challenging position they're in as they try to make us stop thinking that they're doing us harm.
Mark Zuckerberg also saying that Facebook will focus on videos that encourage meaningful social interaction. That decreased time spent on Facebook by roughly 50 million hours a day. They don't normally share exactly how many hours are spent on Facebook. Okay, lots to digest here. David Kirkpatrick, CEO of Techonomy in New York, thanks so much. Bloomberg's Jitendra Rawal of Bloomberg Intelligence. We're going to continue to go through these numbers. We'll bring you all the headlines and updates from Facebook's earnings call throughout the hour. Terminal users, just go to TLive Go. Bloomberg's top live blog being updated by the Bloomberg News team by the second. Staying on earnings, PayPal is sinking after hours, the company issuing a forecast that fell short of Wall Street expectations, signaling struggles ahead. PayPal is looking to compete with banks and startups in the online payments market, but transaction growth of its Venmo service slowed in the fourth quarter to 86%, down from 93% in the previous period. Coming up, we are staying on earnings. Continued growth in cloud services help fuel Microsoft's results. We'll break down the numbers next. And Bloomberg Tech is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. Let's continue our coverage of tech earnings coming in. Microsoft topping analyst estimates for second quarter revenue, helped by growth in its cloud and corporate software businesses, while a tax charge caused the company to report a loss. Our Bloomberg editor-at-large, Corey Johnson, joined us from New York with more. So Microsoft getting a boost from Azure, but there is this tax issue. Corey, what are your takeaways?
A little confusing, and I think we're going to see this from a lot of companies this quarter as they start to figure out what the new tax law, or as they complete figure out what the new tax law is going to mean for them, and repatriation issues and how the tax charges are going to show up in a quarter, which is tricky because the bad companies, the companies trying to hide stuff, are going to use non-GAAP numbers to sweep things under the rug. But the good companies, and I'll put Microsoft in that category, Microsoft's always been exemplary in the way they report earnings, almost always, as far as I can remember, indeed very conservative over history. Their non-GAAP numbers are the ones we're going to have to rely on. And in this case, the non-GAAP numbers are spectacular, and the revenue growth we see from this company really fantastic. And the big takeaway here, to me, is accelerating growth in their cloud business. The cloud business was growing at about 96%, now growing 97, 98%. It's hard to imagine that the business, as it gets so big, it's going to grow even faster, and yet that's what we saw from these results. And I think it really shows us that Satya Nadella has done a seemingly impossible job of turning the battleship that was Microsoft, changing the culture. And not too long ago we were talking about, was Microsoft going to be Microsoft 10 years from now? And now we're seeing a company that's just doing terrific under his leadership, and doing things that Steve Ballmer couldn't get done.
And of course, the cloud was Nadella's baby in the earlier days. I mean, do you think that Microsoft is on a path where they could seriously rival AWS in the cloud, even as the cloud itself is expanding?
Yeah, I mean, it's a smaller business, and decidedly smaller. It is the #2 player and nowhere near competing in terms of size. I think what we might see, and it'll be curious, I'm sure they'll get these kinds of questions on the call, is what kind of customers are going to the Azure, the Microsoft cloud, if you will. You know, Amazon has been very strategic in the way they talk about who's using the cloud, to say, hey, we're not just the startups in Silicon Valley, we're not just the hip monks of the world. That's an old inside Bloomberg West reference, but we're not just these little dumb startups in Silicon Valley. We're big companies like the CIA. We're companies like Netflix. We're competitors like Netflix, and even IBM using the Amazon cloud in addition to having their own cloud. So we'll see what Microsoft will tell us about their customers. One might expect that the corporate customers, the Fortune 500 customers who were already buying from Microsoft and already buying Microsoft distributed on the cloud, would be the Azure customers. We'll see what they have to say about that on the call.
All right, turning to Qualcomm, disappointing revenue and profit forecast. How much of this has to do with slowing smartphone growth in general, and a decline in the use of Qualcomm's chips in favor of other alternatives? Yeah,
I mean, I think the real big question for Qualcomm, and Qualcomm trying to put out a lot of fires in a lot of directions, isn't just the headline of slower smartphone growth, but it's in fact, are they getting paid by customers who are using Qualcomm technology? Qualcomm's game has always been, we'll invent the technology, use it however you want. If we find out you're using it, you're going to have to pay us. Well, you're going to have to pay us. So we know in China was, we're not going to pay you. We might pay you. Will you pay you a little? Also striking a deal with Samsung and announcing that seconds before the results were out today. So again, the devil's in the details here. We'll find out if Qualcomm's customers are actually paying them for the use of Qualcomm's chips. But they've really got a lock on a lot of the ways that the cell phones work, that smartphones work. But slowing growth in that area, of course, is always going to be a headwind for them. But getting customers to pay is the bigger problem.
This is perhaps the last chance they have to show shareholders that Qualcomm should remain independent as Broadcom tries to take this company over. How well are they making that case?
Well, they're not making the case very strongly, but Broadcom's still swimming upstream when it comes to this acquisition, and it's going to be difficult for them to pull this thing off and convince the shareholders and indeed convince regulators that we need to have fewer chip companies out there, and that's a problem. And, companies, when they go it alone, tend to do a better job than when they're in a conglomerate, whether it's semiconductors or any other kind of widget. So we'll see what they can put up, but these results are not the kind of, we're doing great all by ourselves, we don't need your help. For investors, I think they're going to want to see that these guys can do a better job.
All right, Corey Johnson, our editor-at-large, thanks so much. You're going to be coming back a little later in the hour to break down these tech earnings calls. Sheryl Sandberg, COO of Facebook, just starting to speak on their call. We'll have more later in the hour. Well, Kroger is striking back at Amazon. The largest grocery chain in the United States is expanding its so-called Scan Bag Go technology to 400 stores. This allows customers to use a handheld scanner to log grocery items as they ship. It's part of Kroger's bid to prove it can thrive while Amazon pushes deeper into the grocery business with its purchase of Whole Foods last year. Coming up, creating a workplace free from constant notifications and pop-ups. Our next guest is trying to make that a reality. Next, this is Bloomberg. Square is getting in on the Bitcoin bandwagon. The company is introducing Bitcoin trading for almost all users of its cash payments app. The service will be available to most customers of Square Cash, which lets users transfer money to friends and family. Square says most of the purchases and sales happen within seconds. It also won't add an additional percentage or fixed dollar amount onto the sale of Bitcoin. Well, notifications are everywhere today. Facebook likes, emails in your inbox, chat updates, and more, an almost never-ending stream. Now, one Silicon Valley startup called Asana is trying to make sure that companies' employees don't have to face a barrage of notifications with its project management software. The irony is, perhaps, that the two co-founders, Dustin Moskovitz and Justin Rosenstein, are trying to fix a problem that they helped create. Both were integral early employees at Facebook, and not just any employees. Moskovitz co-founded Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg, while Rosenstein helped create Facebook's famous like button. I'd like to welcome Justin Rosenstein to the show. His company, Asana, just secured a $75 million round of funding led by Al Gore's Generation Investment Management, which puts Asana's valuation at $900 million. Justin, great to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So what's this money going towards?
A few things. One is being able to grow internationally. We already have a huge footprint internationally. 192 countries have customers using Asana. But there's a huge opportunity. The market's pretty greenfield in terms of being able to enable more teams to be able to work together easily. Second is more enterprise growth and expansion into more verticals. We see adoption across basically every industry and function, but there's even more we can do there.
So what sets you apart from the other workplace collaboration apps, whether it's Slack or Trello or Facebook and Microsoft, the giants trying to get into this space?
We've seen that companies need 3 pieces of software in order to be able to collaborate effectively. There's messaging, which is things like Slack. There's files, which is things like Google Drive and Dropbox. But even if you have both of those, there's this enormous gap that is left around work management, around actually knowing who is doing what by when, and having the clarity that you need in order to be able to have responsibility tracked well, for everyone to know what the plan is. So work tracking is this huge emerging market that Asana is leading.
So you're focused on calendaring and scheduling?
No, it's more like if you go into the average organization and you say, okay, what are all the steps left between now and accomplishing your goal? Who's responsible for each of those steps? What's the status of each thing? It's really basic things to be able to manage any sort of project. People won't have answers to those questions. And so they spend an enormous amount of time on email and meetings and chats and status updates and status meetings, all this work about work just to get everyone on the same page. And so what Asana does is it gives everyone that clean same page so that everyone can see here's exactly what needs to happen. And when we've asked customers, how much more effective do you think you are with this piece of software than you were before? Customers report an average of a 45% improvement in what they're able to accomplish, which just seems like a staggering improvement to the kinds of things that people can do.
It's interesting. We often talk about whether certain businesses are a zero-sum game here, and I know, not all businesses are, but, obviously Facebook became a monopoly in its field. Google became a monopoly in its field. What makes you think there's room for all of these different workplace collaboration apps when we're already app overloaded?
I think within each vertical, you will see a lot of consolidation. There is going to be consolidation within messaging, within files, and within work management, but all those tools work really symbiotically. Slack is actually a customer of Asana's, and Asana a customer of Slack's, and we partner well together. All those companies partner well together. Within work management, I think you will see the emergence of a single leader. And I think we are already very well positioned to become that category leader, that category king, as a result of that. Among all of those work management systems, we're the only piece of software that is both easy and powerful. You'll see things like Trello that you mentioned that very easy to get started, but there's no way that you can scale to a large organization. Or you'll see clunky enterprise software that's so hard to use, people don't use it. And the result is we've seen that for companies of so many different industries, whether that's from NASA to National Geographic, from Navy Federal Credit Union to General Electric, or nonprofits like Teach for America, or even governments like Providence, Rhode Island, they're all being able to adopt Asana because every single organization has real needs around being able to work together more effectively.
And are you actually trying to decrease notifications?
Yeah, a lot of the notifications is this kind of constant, continuous partial attention that you get into, where you can't get into flow, you can't get into focus because someone just sent you a message or someone just emailed you. Email becomes someone else's to-do list. It's just showing you whatever someone happened to most recently message you. Whereas to be maximally focused, maximally in flow, to get the most done, you want to have clarity on what are all the things that I need to accomplish? What am I responsible for in priority order? So Asana turns that notification paradigm on its head and just shows you calmly, here's all the things that you need to do in the right order so you can mindfully proceed in your work.
The overwhelming nature of notifications is in part a symptom of, this company that you are integral to, Facebook, which is now under fire for fake news, for being addictive. What's your perspective on that and Facebook's responsibility?
I'm really glad that as a culture, we're finally having this important conversation about what role do we want technology to play in our lives. But I think people often oversimplify to technology's all good or technology's all evil, when I think it's really that technologists have a core responsibility to design software mindfully, to think, how can we maximize the amount of good that it's doing and minimize the amount of harm? And so that's something we've been focused on in Asana from day one, is how can we allow people to really align their attention with their intention? And I hope that all software developers around the world are thinking about that more and more.
Well, it's interesting because we were talking about Facebook's earnings earlier, and they're actually doing things that they feel are better for users, but decrease time spent on Facebook. Are they getting onto thin ice, or is that something that they should be doing by making those decisions?
I think if you're truly a mission-oriented company, then money is, when Generation gave the new round of fundraising we just did, I think of it as that the point of building rockets is not to have a lot of rocket fuel, just as the point of building businesses is not to have a lot of money. Money is the fuel you need to accomplish your mission. And so the more that you actually care about your mission, the more important it is to focus on what's good for users. I feel really fortunate at Asana that our mission and our business model are so well aligned, and that the more that people derive value from Asana, the more they directly pay us. And so to be able to see that, in just the last year, we've had this 80% increase of revenue, I think demonstrates that kind of value increase.
Hence the investment from Al Gore's fund. All right, Justin Rosenstein, co-founder of Asana, thank you so much for joining us. All right, the Facebook call is underway. CFO Dave Wehner on the call right now. Mark Zuckerberg also speaking moments ago, talking about how time spent decreased by 5% in the fourth quarter.
I'm Elisa Parenti in Washington, and you're watching Bloomberg Technology. Here's a check of your first word news. Amnesty International is condemning President Trump's move to keep Guantanamo Bay prison camp open.
Amnesty International feels that this is considers that this is a disgrace. People have been detained for over a decade without any prospect of any fair trial, and now President Trump is proposing to increase that number.
The organization's director of law and policy called the detention facility a stain on America's reputation. Government prosecutors have decided not to retry New Jersey Senator Robert Menendez on corruption charges. The first trial of Menendez and a Florida eye doctor ended in a hung jury last November. Menendez was charged with trading his political influence for gifts and campaign donations. The Trump administration's director of the Centers for Disease Control has quit over a stock scandal. Brenda Fitzgerald is accused of buying shares in Japan Tobacco after she was appointed. Now, one of the CDC's stated goals is to reduce tobacco use. And the U.S. has awarded Boeing $6.6 billion to continue managing the nation's missile defenses. The Defense Department says the contract includes adding more ground-based missile interceptors and extends Boeing's role for 6 more years, bringing its total contract to $12.6 billion. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Elisa Parenti. This is Bloomberg. Just after 5:30 p.m. here in Washington, it is 6:30 Thursday morning in Hong Kong. We are joined by Bloomberg's Sophie Kamarudin with a look at the markets. Sophie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Elisa. Asian stocks face a mixed start to February, and we have that hawkish Fed tone to digest as well, which didn't do any favors for the dollar. Now, gold also looking steady after faltering on prospects of faster rate hikes from the United States. And oil, that is on the rise, despite U.S. stockpiles rising the most in over a year. And Asian investors are going to be on the lookout for inflation surprises in the region, potentially with reports due from South Korea, Indonesia, and Thailand. And we have a key highlight from India. The 2018 federal budget is due. And over in Australia, we are waiting on home prices and building approvals. We have futures pointing lower ahead of that. Plus, the earnings parade continues in Tokyo. We are waiting for Kobe Steel and Nomura among the highlights. In Hong Kong, I'm Sophie Kamarudin. Up next, more with Bloomberg Technology.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. Let's return to our top story. Shares of Facebook falling in after-hours trading after reporting fourth-quarter results. What investors are focusing on here is user engagement after broader questions arise over its societal impact. Facebook reporting its slowest year-over-year user growth on record and a decline in North American users for the first time ever. And here's what CEO Mark Zuckerberg had to say on the call about these changes.
One of the most important things we can do is make sure our services aren't just fun to use, but also good for people's well-being and for society overall. So far this year, we've already announced a couple of important updates. The first is prioritizing meaningful social interactions over passive consumption of content.
Debbie Williamson is an analyst who covers Facebook at eMarketer. She joins us now from Seattle. So first of all, let's talk about this change in engagement as a result of these intentional changes that Facebook has been making. Debbie, how concerning are they for you?
Well, these are changes that I think that Facebook had to make for a variety of reasons, which you've already laid out. But, this is something that I think is really important for Facebook in 2018, restoring confidence in its user base, restoring the ability to attract people on a regular basis and keep them engaged with the platform.
So what about the fact that users in the U.S. have declined for the first time ever?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question? There was a bit of background noise.
What about this fact that users in the U.S. have declined for the first time ever?
Well, U.S. is the largest market for Facebook, and it's been that way for a while. In our own forecast, we've modeled little to no growth as well in Facebook usage in the U.S., so that's really not surprising. The vast majority of the growth that's happening in Facebook is happening outside of the U.S. at this point.
They did say on the call that they don't think it's going to be an ongoing trend, but of course it's something that we're going to be watching. Mark Zuckerberg on the call just moments ago also talking about the transparency of ads. Of course, the ad platform and Facebook's very business model has been under fire for how it allows advertisers to target users. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We've started rolling out a major ads transparency effort. We support Congress passing legislation to make all advertising more transparent, but we're not going to wait for them to act. We've already begun launching a way for anyone to view the ads a page is running on Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger, even if they aren't in the intended audience. And we're testing this in Canada first, with the goal of rolling it out in the U.S. this summer ahead of the midterm elections.
Debbie, they're saying ad revenue growth rates are going to decelerate. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, I think that's partially the law of large numbers. Facebook is already the second largest digital publisher in the world, with an 18% share of digital ad spending worldwide, according to eMarketer's forecast. So, you know, you've really got to see that this company is definitely going to decline in ad revenue growth over time. I don't think that's concerning. I do think that there are plenty of other things that Facebook has in its arsenal, including Instagram, Messenger, and WhatsApp, which it really hasn't tapped much, if at all.
We're still not getting a ton of information about Instagram numbers, but how optimistic are you about Instagram user and ad revenue growth this year?
You know what? Ad revenue growth, we're forecasting about a doubling, almost a doubling of ad revenue growth for Instagram this year to close to $8 billion. So Instagram is doing very, very well. It's benefiting by its close relationship with Facebook. User growth also, we're forecasting to rise this year by a significant percentage, double-digit percentages. And again, it's popular. It's a safe place. It's a nice place. It's a place for people to go and look at pretty pictures and engage with their friends and celebrities and influencers, and it really presents a nice opportunity to grow in the Facebook fold.
They also said that WhatsApp recently had 1.5 billion monthly active users. This is another potential revenue stream that they really haven't turned on yet. They've been doing a lot of experiments. What do you expect to see to happen there?
Yes, you're right. It's been a bunch of experiments. They've just launched an app a week or two ago where businesses can use the app to start to market themselves to users on WhatsApp. There's no advertising whatsoever on WhatsApp yet, but we expect it to follow a model similar to what Facebook did with Messenger, which is to provide marketing tools for companies first and then gradually roll in advertising. And we're expecting that for WhatsApp as well. Not sure if it's going to happen this year, but certainly that's the path we're expecting it to follow.
How much potential does that have? I mean, obviously, there are a lot of ways for businesses to connect to their customers. Facebook and Facebook Messenger is another one of those ways.
Yeah, you know what? eMarketer hasn't yet forecasted advertising revenue for Messenger or WhatsApp yet, but these are early businesses. I mean, there is a lot of opportunity, particularly in the area of customer service for a company like Facebook and with Messenger and WhatsApp. But as far as advertising, I mean, it's very minimal at this point, could grow over time. Obviously, these are very popular apps with millions, if not billions, of users.
And what are you expecting from Facebook's original video efforts, original content efforts called Watch?
That one I'm watching very closely. You know, there's a lot of competition. There's so much quality video out right now that Facebook really has a lot of work to do to attract users and also to attract advertisers. It's experimenting with different types of advertising on the platform, including pre-roll and mid-roll video. That's somewhat new for Facebook. It's not new for advertisers, which is a good thing, but there's going to be a lot of competition for this growth, for advertisers, for users of Watch, and for programming, quite frankly. We don't know exactly how this is going to roll out, but we do know with all the time that Mark has spent talking about video that this is something that they're going to invest very heavily in.
And Sheryl Sandberg saying on the call just moments ago that it's still early days for Watch, as you say, Debbie, that they're very focused on the social aspects of viewing, and it is too early to report real findings, but that is another thing we're all going to continue to watch. Debbie Williamson with eMarketer. As always, Debbie, great to have you here on the show. Well, Amazon is getting ready to report its fourth quarter results Thursday, so just how could its recent major announcements impact the bottom line? We took a look.
Amazon's quest for world dominance continues, almost seemingly unchecked. It's set to report its first full quarter since it unveiled the convenience store of the future, its Amazon-like rainforest-infused office spheres, and its $13.7 billion purchase of Whole Foods, a purchase that pushes Amazon deeper into the $800 billion grocery market, where most spending remains with traditional brick-and-mortar retailers like Walmart. Now, Amazon's share price has rocketed up over 66% in the last year, and it surpassed $1,400 for the first time on Friday, fueled by investor enthusiasm around its e-commerce growth and its profitable cloud computing business. And let's not forget Amazon's growing advertising business that promises better profit margins than online sales. Now, some investors aren't so bullish, thinking this Wall Street darling is due for a pullback. After all, big spending that outweighs revenue growth has historically been the thing to trigger an Amazon sell-off. Investors are also watching for signs of growth for Amazon Prime subscribers, the service that can turn occasional shoppers into devotees. The fourth quarter is an ideal time to boost those subscribers thanks to free 2-day shipping during the holidays. But could a company that has 90 million members and is planning to open a second U.S. headquarters that wants to take over your home appliances and get into the health insurance game be reaching a saturation point? We'll be watching, and so will investors.
Coming up, after months of buildup, the big trial is almost here. Waymo versus Uber. We look at what just happened during jury selection next. This is Bloomberg. Ride-hailing provider Lyft is expanding to Europe. The San Francisco-based rival to Uber opening an office in the southern German city of Munich, home to the likes of BMW AG and Siemens AG. This comes after it announced an expansion to Toronto in November, its first outside the U.S. Lyft has not said how many people it's hiring for the office, but that they will work on the company's autonomous driving efforts. Sticking with self-driving cars, today was jury selection for what might be the most anticipated trial of the year for Silicon Valley. That is Waymo versus Uber. The Alphabet self-driving car company alleges that Uber stole trade secrets by hiring engineers who worked at Waymo. Now the trial begins Monday, and it could have far-reaching effects in the hunts for talent in Silicon Valley. Joining me now, Bloomberg News' Joel Rosenblatt, who covers legal matters and came from the courthouse just moments ago. So what's the mood in there?
The mood was surprisingly agreeable and kind of smooth. This has been, as you know, we've talked about this case over the last year, hard fought, bitter. Jury selection today went really smoothly. The judge allotted 3 days. It happened in less than 5 hours. So
what does that signify?
Well, it signifies that the parties agreed beforehand, unusual, that if any juror had any kind of strong opinion about either company, they would say so on a questionnaire and be immediately dismissed. And so there was at least a dozen people who felt strongly about one company or the other and were gone. And so that just really kind of moved the process along very quickly.
So each side has just 16 hours to make its case.
Right.
That's not long, right?
It's extraordinarily short, especially given the story that kind of, especially Waymo wants to tell.
So many details here.
So many details. You have the acquisition. The allegation is that Uber conspired with Anthony Lewandowski, a former Waymo engineer, to steal the trade secrets. So you have to try to explain all that. That's how they got the trade secrets. But in order to get damages, Waymo has to prove that Uber's using the trade secrets. So then they have this kind of whole scientific, technological dimension that they have to prove. So it's like, kind of, how do you explain all that? We've spent a year talking about it. It's so complicated. How are they going to boil that down in 16 hours? It's going to be really interesting to see.
How do you think they will do that? I mean, what do you expect them to emphasize?
I'm kind of guessing. So Uber insiders will tell you that they're feeling very good about the case now as it's going to progress, because they feel that that Waymo doesn't have the proof of technological use in the actual trade secrets, in the LiDAR, in the radar that we're talking about. I think Waymo may choose to emphasize the acquisition of the trade secrets. In other words, the theft of the trade secrets. There's a real drama around that. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence, a pile of it, that they can choose from, and could sway a jury with that evidence, even though it's circumstantial and maybe not direct proof of trade secret theft.
Walk us through the key witnesses. Two of whom are Travis Kalanick and Larry Page. Yeah, right?
Travis Kalanick, Larry Page, John Krafjic, CEO of Waymo. Those are the top people. Bill Gurley, I would put on that list. Former director, who's going to provide some pretty interesting testimony potentially. There's also just some Uber executives that are maybe lower profile that we haven't heard of that I think are just going to be very, very important.
Are they going to give the goods? I mean, we saw some of the I do not recalls coming from Larry Page, and are they really going to share real details here.
I have an article coming out in Business Week magazine tomorrow about Travis Kalanick's role as a witness and how important he is to Uber. He's been so well rehearsed. You know, he's been doing depositions in this trial since at least July, and coached is not the right word, but practiced with his lawyers. And he kind of gives the same answer, that he just kind of knows only the kind of outlines of what happened. He doesn't know exactly kind of all the legal ramifications of what happened.
All right. Joel Rosenblatt, our legal reporter, excited for your daily updates as the trial gets underway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, we continue to monitor the slew of tech earnings just out. Facebook's earnings call wrapping up. We will have full coverage of that and other highlights from Microsoft's results. Here's what Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg had to say about working with advertisers to combat discrimination and hate speech. This is Bloomberg.
We take our responsibility to prevent abuse of our ad systems very seriously, and we're investing heavily in both people and technology to protect the integrity of our platform. In addition to rolling out the ads transparency tool in Canada that Mark mentioned, we've disabled the option that lets advertisers exclude people in specific multicultural affinity segments until we can develop better safeguards against discrimination.
Two, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
SpaceX just launched its first rocket since a satellite mysteriously went missing on January 7th. Wednesday's launch featured a Falcon 9 rocket carrying a satellite for the government of Luxembourg. SpaceX's next launch is expected to be the maiden flight of its larger and more powerful Falcon Heavy. That rocket, the most powerful operational rocket in the world, could take off for the first time as soon as February 6th, according to SpaceX CEO Elon Musk. And we continue to monitor reaction from several big tech companies reporting earnings. Take a look at how Facebook, Qualcomm, and Microsoft are doing in after-hours trading. Our Bloomberg editor-at-large, Corey Johnson, joins us now from New York to wrap the highlights. Corey, so if you look at the terminal, Facebook shares now up after hours, 3%, rebounding this after executives saying they expect customer use to rebound. Of course, the big concern is that decline in North American users for the first time ever.
And they're against racism, as we just heard from that Sot, and I'm all for it. Me too. What really struck me in the Facebook results was maybe an explanation as to why Mark Zuckerberg and the rest of Facebook now will make some changes and mess with what people see, what you and Dave were talking about earlier in the show, and mess with what people see and change the user experience. They are seeing a tremendous growth in the revenue per user. Revenue per user worldwide grew at, what did I figure, 28%. If you look at the most developed market in the U.S., revenue per user hit $26.76 in the quarter, up 35% year over year. That's how much money Facebook's getting because you're a user. And so that shows you that they've got some room to maybe change the experience, because advertisers are not just rushing to give Facebook money to get in front of users. They're paying them more per user in a dramatic fashion. Again, 35% in the U.S. growth year over year. That really shows you that they've got, I think that they feel like they've got advertisers, they've got users. Now they can change that user experience somewhat. If they make Facebook, if you use Facebook less, but they can convince advertisers that the value is rarer and better because it's rare, then they can charge even more money. I think that's the gamble here. And what we can see is that advertisers are already willing to pay a lot more to get in front of Facebook users like you and me, Emily, and that's what they're paying for.
Sheryl Sandberg saying on the call just moments ago that they have 6 million advertisers on Facebook, only 2 million on Instagram. So there's a lot of opportunity.
Well, surely, and I wonder when they're going to give us some real Instagram results so we can understand that business a little better. And indeed, I would love to know how that's tracking. I mean, I can try to guess from my own Instagram feed, at Corey John, of course, which everybody knows. But my own Instagram feed seems to have a few more ads, but they are remarkably contextual, and they seem to pick up data from other places I'm looking. If I'm on Facebook looking for a new cooking knife, I can't believe I'm getting suggestions about cooking knives on my Instagram account, but I am. And I'm seeing lots of that. And it seems like I'm seeing a little bit more of that. I suspect that's the experience lots of users are having. And as they monkey with the Facebook product And if it hurts some results, it makes the growth in Instagram even more important. And as we see, kind of amazingly, a dip in Facebook user numbers, that makes the growth in Instagram even more important. So we'll see what we see there from Instagram in future releases of information, and indeed in the Q&A on the conference call today.
I know you've been tracking Microsoft and Qualcomm as we've been on the show. Microsoft shares slightly up, Qualcomm shares slightly down. Any other highlights coming out of the calls?
Yeah, so let's tease this forward a little bit. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about Apple a lot, and I think one of the questions is, what's happening with phone sales going forward for Apple here? We're seeing a lot of indications that Q4 was great, but now what? So Qualcomm coming out and saying there are certain modems in China where inventory is stacking up. Inventory, of course, is the death knell of every component maker and every hardware maker as long as there's been technology. Inventory stacking up is the problem that kills companies. And so not that Qualcomm's about to be killed or Apple's about to be killed, but when we hear about a major supplier, Qualcomm, in a thing that they supply, the modem, to Apple, having an inventory issue in China, we might assume that that is in fact selling into Apple, and that's a concern that Apple's iPhone 10 and iPhone 8 sales are not, at least sale manufacturing isn't going great. And if the manufacturing isn't going great, that means the sales aren't going great, or at least is being pulled back. So a lot of attention is going to be paid to Apple during the trading day tomorrow, but certainly when we're sitting here tomorrow, Emily, looking at the results from Apple, because Qualcomm's saying there's a problem.
All right, Corey Johnson, our editor-at-large, thanks so much. And we are going to have much more on earnings tomorrow. Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, all reporting on the same day. Lots of fun for us. We will have all the very latest for you right here. Thank you so much for watching this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Reminder, we're live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. That is all for now. This is Bloomberg.